Did you know? Originally, Ocarina of Time ran on the same engine as Super Mario 64, and both games were even developed concurrently. However, Ocarina's engine was so heavily altered by the end of development that its co-director, Shigeru Miyamoto, considers them two completely different engines. This concurrent production reflected how the original Mario and Zelda games were made alongside each other and shared ideas. Concepts were also traded between Ocarina and Mario 64, such as horse riding, which was actually planned for Mario 64. Ocarina of Time also planned to use Ganon's castle as a hub world with portals to different areas, similar to how players jump through paintings in Peach's castle. However, the team realized the Nintendo 64 was more powerful than they originally thought, and reconstructed the game to be more open. The fight with Ganondorf's doppelganger going in and out of paintings is a relic of this castle hub world idea. Even earlier than this, however, Ocarina was influenced by a failed attempt at remaking Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link. Before work began on Ocarina, Nintendo experimented with a polygonal remake of Zelda 2 using the Super Effects chip. Nintendo's Yoshiaki Koizumi described the prototype in motion as a thin polygon Link, seen from the side and fighting with his sword. The emphasis on swordplay came from a desire to incorporate Chanbara-style sword fighting. Chanbara is a genre of film known as samurai cinema in the West, and is known for its intense sword fighting, which is often one-on-one. This desire was carried over to Ocarina of Time, and is likely the reason the first teaser for Zelda 64 was a one-on-one sword fight. Miyamoto initially intended the game to have a first-person perspective, with the camera switching to a side-on or third-person perspective while sword fighting. This first-person perspective would show off more of the game's terrain, and allow the team to focus on developing enemies and environments rather than Link's appearance. The concept was abandoned when young Link was introduced, as Miyamoto believed a third-person view would help highlight the differences between young and adult Link. The switch from 2D to 3D presented Nintendo with some issues, as fighting in 3D introduced a new axis for the player to manage. For inspiration to solve their issues, some members of the team traveled to Toei Kyoto Studio Park, which often had period drama shows. At one point, the team saw a ninja show where a samurai caught a kusarigama thrown by a ninja. When the chain was pulled taut, the ninja moved in a circle around the samurai. This became the inspiration for the Z-targeting mechanic. The trip to Toei Studio Park also inspired the game's enemy AI. When an actor was fighting multiple assailants, only one would attack at a time, allowing a single actor to deal with many foes. This same principle was incorporated into the enemy AI in Ocarina of Time. Actors from the park were also hired to do motion capture work for the game. An actor was hired for Link's standard movements, and a professional katana stunt actor was hired to perform Link's attack animations. Ocarina's character illustrator Yusuke Nakano has said he based Link's appearance on a world-famous Hollywood actor. Nakano never revealed which actor this was, but we do know that Ganondorf was also based on an actor, and which one. Character designer Satoru Takezawa stated that Ganondorf was based on Christopher Lambert, best known for his role as Connor MacLeod in the Highlander series. Toru Osawa, Ocarina's scriptwriter, wanted Ganon to be a more complex personality, and show that Ganon isn't simply pure evil. Osawa tried to show a more human side to Ganon, and sought to portray him in a similar way to Rao from Fist of the North Star. The team opted to use real-time cutscenes over pre-rendered scenes, and this was done for several reasons. Not only did they want cutscene visuals to be consistent with the gameplay, but they also wanted to be able to adjust scenes quickly. Pre-rendered video can take hours and even days to produce, and changing them would have been a much greater ordeal than altering real-time cutscenes. Their decision proved to be wise, as Miyamoto changed the game's story just months before release, and several cutscenes had to be reworked. Ocarina of Time was intended to release for the Nintendo 64's disk drive add-on. This version of the game would have taken advantage of the internal clock and extra space of the 64DD to present a persistent world. For example, cut grass would remain cut, and signs would stay broken once destroyed. Eventually, development was shifted onto the regular Nintendo 64 following poor sales of the 64DD. The switch to less powerful hardware resulted in many planned features being cut. Despite this, hope still remained for a 64DD version. Ocarina of Time was planned to get an expansion titled The Legend of Zelda, Ura, or Another Zelda, exclusively for the 64DD. Although it's linked to the development of Ocarina of Time, we'll explain the story of Ura Zelda in a separate video. In a previous episode, we mentioned a controversy surrounding the music in the Fire Temple. In versions 1.0 and 1.1 of Ocarina of Time, the Fire Temple's music contained chanting taken from Islamic prayer. From version 1.2 of Ocarina of Time onwards, the music was changed to remove this chant. It was widely believed that the change was made due to backlash from the Muslim community. However, research conducted by GameTrailers.com suggests another explanation for the game's removal. While Nintendo did indeed confirm the chanting was removed because of the religious reference, the ROM data for version 1.2 of the game shows the ROM was completed before Ocarina of Time's release. This implies that the change was made preemptively, and not because of any backlash. According to a Nintendo representative, the chant was taken from a commercial sound library. The same sample was also used in the Nintendo 64 version of Cruisin' World, which corroborates Nintendo's claim. Members of the Zelda Universe forums were eventually able to track down the sample in question on an album called Best Service Voice Spectral Volume 1, where the track was simply called Track 76. It's possible that the game's composer, Koji Kondo, was completely unaware of the track's religious implications due to the innocuous title. There's evidence to suggest that the character Fado was planned to have a more significant role during development. She has a unique design amongst the Kokiri, despite not having a plot-significant character. She also had another design at an earlier point, suggesting the character was either developed or repurposed at some point. She appears to be related to Mido in some way, as she'll constantly reference him when spoken to while wearing different masks. The pair also share a naming convention. Both of their names end with the syllable do, with the first syllables being mi and fa. All three syllables are found in solfeggio in English-speaking countries, where people would practice the pitch of their voice while saying do, re, mi, so, fa, la, ti, do. In The Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker, a male Kokiri character becomes the Sage of the Wind, and is also called Fado. Because of this, some have speculated that Fado from Ocarina was originally going to be the Sage of the Wind herself at some point. The game has more unseen secrets. The Iron Knuckle enemies that are found towards the end of the game all have Gerudo thieves inside of them. The players can see the Gerudos as heads by positioning themselves so that the camera clips through the Iron Knuckles' helmets. It's unclear how canonical this inclusion was supposed to be. Most Iron Knuckles simply vanish once defeated. The exception to this is the mini-boss of the Spirit Temple. After its defeat, its armor falls off, revealing Naburu inside. As all Iron Knuckles share the same basic model in-game, having a Gerudo inside every one may have been a time-saving measure by Nintendo, allowing them to reuse the same basic model for all Iron Knuckles. Another possibility is that Iron Knuckles were originally intended to have contained Gerudos, but this story element was altered late in development, perhaps due to the dark implications of them being enslaved by Ganon. In either case, the 3DS version removed the Gerudo heads from inside the armor, cementing that these Iron Knuckles are not Gerudos in the current continuity. In 2011, to celebrate the series' 25th anniversary, Nintendo released Hyrule Historia, a compendium of Zelda series up to that point. The book contained trivia, behind-the-scenes facts, and a timeline of events, which had been the topic of debate for years leading up to that point. The Zelda timeline's pivotal moment is centered around Ocarina of Time, which splits into three separate timelines. One where Link is defeated during the events of the game, the Child Era, where Link returns to the past and Ganondorf is executed before he ever came to power, and the Adult Era, the timeline that continued on after Ganondorf's rule. Interestingly, it seems that Ocarina of Time was originally to have contained three separate timelines in and of itself: past, present, and future. This is suggested by unused text in the game's code, which reads, the entrance to the past, the entrance to the present, and the entrance to the future. The Owl Kepora Gebora is confirmed by the Hyrule Historia to be the Sage of Light, Rauru, guiding Link through his journey as a child. All of the 7 sages were named after townships in Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. This may have been an oblique reference to the fact that Ocarina of Time was originally inspired by a failed remake of Zelda 2. In the official Zelda timeline, however, Ocarina of Time takes place before Zelda 2, meaning that the towns were most likely named after the sages. The game has more obscure Easter eggs as well. In the Forest Temple, the player will encounter the 4 Poe sisters: Meg, Joelle, Beth, and Amy. The characters are named after the 4 main characters in the 1832 novel Little Women: Meg, Jo, Beth, and Amy March. The Poe sisters' distinctive giggle is also Ganondorf's laugh sample sped up. In the German version of the game, the 4 carpenters working in Kakariko Village are named John, Paul, George, and Ringo, after the Beatles. Epona also took her name from real-world inspirations. She's named after a Celtic horse goddess. As a result of her association with horses, Epona was also associated with life, health, fertility, and plenty. When Ocarina of Time was translated into different languages, certain changes had to be made. One example can be found in the French version of the game, where the word Deku is changed to Mojo. This was because the French pronunciation of Deku would be Deku, which sounds like a slang term for feces in French. However, one change in the French version added a potentially vulgar phrase. The French game's flower bombs are called choux piture, which is meant to mean exploding cabbage, but can also mean farting cabbage. If you want more Zelda, you should check out Madness, where N64 games such as Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask are pitted against each other to see which is the best N64 game. And if you still haven't forgotten the farting cabbage, this video has something to do with farts, and I will plug it until the year 2050.